negotiated coexistence. Inclusion of all people within the communities, recognition of everybody's rights, negotiated coexistence. There are differences that we have to agree to disagree on, but we can still coexist, right? The inevitability of diversity also demands that modern political communities need to rethink legitimacy, citizenship, and belonging. So within this diverse different religious and even within, you have to rethink what it means to be Gambian, what it means to be a legitimate member of this community. It can't be only defined by one group or one section of the society, right? So these are the concepts that I'm trying to argue in terms of what diversity means for human social construct. So in the end, we have to embrace rather than resist diversity or plurality. That is what I'm trying to say here, right? Because three things come out of what I'm trying to argue. Diversity is a permanent condition of human social life. You cannot avoid it, especially in the modern day and age. That is a given. The differences also are a source of strength and not just a potential for division, right? Any societies from way back in history you look at, development does not come from, a stagnant community. Ideas come from outside, ideas come from social interaction with people of different mindsets, different experiences, different views. So it is necessary to embrace that and use it as a source of strength instead of using it as a dividing factor. Also, in building a modern polity, in building a modern community, no one group has monopoly over the national identity or the legitimacy of that society or its values. It has to be negotiated, it has to be shared values, common values. Now, because my focus area is transitional justice, currently I work a lot with what we call the African Union's transitional justice policy, which was developed to help countries that are dealing with transitional issues or at least implementing transitional justice to be able to use it as a policy framework to guide the process of addressing past atrocities or violations and moving towards more progressive dispensations, right? And part of that policy is that it develops issues of conflict or issues of repressive governance that is being addressed through the transition. That is really, I think, an innovative aspect that reflects our African identity is diversity management. One of the elements. It's called diversity management, and this is what the policy says about that. Dimensions of conflict based on race, ethnicity, color, sex, religion, or political opinion, right? This is particularly important in societies where ethno-cultural and religious polarization and animosity feel as prominent parts of conflict or where violence target particular ethnic, religious, or regional groups. So this has to be something that I think, especially in our context, every political community, every state has to think about diversity management. I do a lot of research and writing on transitional justice, and I have come to the conclusion that poor management of diversity, and we will deal with the issue more, is one of the core problems that creates conflicts, that causes the instability that we experience in our region. So, the folly of dominance. So every time, and in the past, some societies were able to exercise dominance from one paradigm, basically. So whether it was religious or it was cultural. So you look at, for example, the Mali Empire. It was a dominant culture with different sub-ethnicities and also diversity, but one dominant group. And you find that during these periods of empire kingdoms that used to be easier. It no longer works that way. But also, even if you look at those systems and what caused challenges for them, right? We look at the Spanish Inquisition during the reign of what do they call him, King Ferdinand and Isabel, trying to instill an orthodoxy, Christian orthodoxy in Spain, right? Expelling most of the other religious groups that were there, so Jews and Muslims who were there initially, and also forcing conversions. So you either convert or you expelled out of the country. That what eventually happened with that was that it created a brain drain. So most of the people who had the skills, businessmen, entrepreneurs, academics, all of the intellectuals that were there, most of them being of these other groups have to be forced out or were suppressed. So no new ideas. If you bring up any ideas that are opposed to the conventional understanding of the monarchs and the groups of religious, co-opted religious groups that supported them, then you were in trouble. That created the downfall of Spain. Is now, up to now, I think one of the least, I don't know, even those of us that want to go to the back, we tend to not want to stay in Spain. When we get to Spain, we are targeting other more developed countries, right? Also, India was another example, right? Where, you know, when the British colonized India, these two main groups of Muslims and Hindus were coexisting. But because of you know, diversity issues, poorly managed, but also because of exploitation of the colonial system, created a lot of tensions and erupted into violence, right? What ended up happening is now we have a division where India was partitioned into two. India mainly now Hindu, with some Muslims of course, but Pakistan, which also now became a Muslim state, but still tensions and conflicts between them, right? So again, poorly managed diversity. Rwandan genocide, we all know about that one, I think, right? Again, not religion, but again based on ethnicity, but again, just pushing diversity, resulting in a genocide that within 100 days, over 800,000 people got killed. Nazi Germany, putting all of the blames of the challenges of the country on Jews, on Roma, Slavs, all these minority groups that were in Germany, ending up in the, of course, the Holocaust that we all know about. At least 6 million Jews killed, and a lot of them displaced. So that is also again another consequence of poor diversity management. Now, those we had periods where, like I said, it would have been easier. You had the Islamic, the Mongols. There were periods in history where it would have been easier to maintain an orthodoxy. One group of one thought by one group of people over all of even the Roman Empire, I would say, right? Same thing. There were freedoms, but you could enforce one ideology, one perspective of life in terms of religion, in terms of governance, and you could impose it. That has changed the good function, right? So you can't really impose, you know, that I talked about is a key factor of some of these politics. When Africa was partitioned, there was no distinction between, okay, this is the one ethnic group, you know, and you demarcate them based on that, or one religion. We were just lumped together in some very random fashions, right? Based on, of course, the interests and benefits of the Europeans. But, right? It's always a defined territory. Usually with the caliphates, with the empires, with the kingdoms, those boundaries were really very loose, and you know, invasions and all of those things were easily done. Nowadays, sovereignty is a core issue of the international framework of states, right? And so a defined territory is one of the things. A central government now, right? composition of those that are within that state, citizens, right? So that means it's not only Muslims in the Gambia who are going to select that state or that authority. And it's not only going to be Christians, it's not only going to be Mandinkas or Fullers. It has to be the whole diversity of the nation coming together to decide, let's select this body that will represent the interests of everybody within that polity, right? That is the whole idea of that. And there is also a framework for citizenship and belonging. And it is not going to be based on, for example, a caliphate, right? You could say in the Islamic caliphate, if you are Muslim, you belong, right? If you are not a Muslim, you can be a guest, but there are this and this and that. The nation state, the basis of citizenship is what? We have it in our constitution. This is section 8(9) of our constitution. Talks about, citizenship rights. If you're born here and one of your parents is a Gambian, you are a Gambian. So there are rules to being a citizen, being part of this political system, right? And it is not based on religion. It is not based on any of these other differentiating factors, right? And that is clearly spelled in the Constitution. I will talk about that when we deal with the legal framework. There's also mechanisms for resource collection and redistribution. So that is the factor. That is the factor, right? So that is again within a diverse community. It has to be a collective. It can't be based on one single identity, right? Systems of communication. Information control, security apparatus. I'll jump through them but with security apparatus I'll talk about, because what tends to happen, especially in our context also, is that you find nation states where you have one ethnicity dominating the security services, and that also now becomes a recipe for poorly managing diversity, and it ends up in coup d'etats, it ends up in a lot of other negative outcomes for the politics, right? I recognize legal and normative framework, so a legal system with courts and processes of how you access justice when your rights within the political society is affected, right? And again, if you're talking about a legal system, a just system, it has to be for the benefit of everybody and treating everybody fairly. And that cannot happen if it is only based on one paradigm of thinking. You cannot just be Sharia, right? For example, in the Gambia, you can't have Christians have different ethnicities, different forms of belief, and you impose Sharia law as the applicable normative framework in terms of law in the country. It becomes a problem, right? Avenues for political participation or its management, right? So we talked about selecting a framework or at least a legitimate authority or a power that manages that country, right? And so those are what we will call international standards.